Hola people, and welcome to EyiyemiOliviaChats. Today we're going to talk about my road trip to Lakowe. It was a trip and a half, but it is such a beautiful community. I can't spill yet why it is I went, but what I want to talk about is the road journey there and how there could be so many other alternative ways to get to Lakowe. Being that Lagos has, according to Google, about 17% of Lagos is water, I find that hard to believe actually. It looks like as if it's a whole lot more. I couldn't find a ferry that would take me as close to Lakowe as possible. What I found was a ferry that would go to Badore, which is in Ajah. And coming out of Ajah, going in and out of Ajah is a nightmare. So, I mean, that for me was not going to be an option. There's no rail line that I know that runs from the mainland to the island. And I'm wondering why that is. But then again, I read up a bit on the Nigeria Railway Corporation, and I think I have a bit of understanding as to why that is. They had declared bankruptcy sometime in the late 80s. They had been mismanaged from just after independence to the late 80s, and they were kind of sort of revived again in 2002, 2006. And as we know, the Nigerian Railway Corporation now runs a train line from Lagos to Ibadan and back, stopping in Abeokuta and a few other places on the way. I have been on that train. I think it's a bit slow. I mean, 2.5 hours from Lagos to Ibadan. I mean, why? But that said, and then I don't like the fact that we have to pay cash at the counter. I have said it from once I heard that the railway was up and running, that paying cash was the only form of money accepted. I was thinking, why? We should be able to buy our tickets online. I mean, when 2022 technology works. But that's a whole different story for another day. The trains, by the way, were clean. The AC was freezing. I forgot about that part because I'd been warned, but I completely forgot. But it was a pleasant ride. Back to my road trip to Lakowe. Forgive me for the ambient sounds. This is what comes with working from home, right? So those coming from work and etc., etc. So you might hear a bit of background noise, but hey. So I live on the mainland, but I thought it might be wiser to stay on the island since I knew I was going towards that area. So the night before, I had moved on to the island where I slept overnight, and I left where I was staying in Agungi about 9:30 in the morning. Fortunately for us, we got to Lakowe about 10:45-ish. The traffic going wasn't too bad. Some major portions of the roads are gross, to say the least, and it's rainy season in Nigeria. So of course that lengthens the trip. And then it's a 2-lane road all the way from just after Ajah to, as far as I know, as far as I saw, Lakowe. I don't know if that's the same thing that goes all the way to Ekpe. But we saw the traffic coming back. Now we left Lakowe at about 4. I got back to the mainland, opened my front door at 8:30. The potholes in the segments of the road. So thinking about this, I thought, so which ministry or which parastatal is it that is their responsibility to fix these roads? So I'm going to read a bit of what I found out. So I first researched FERMA, and FERMA is the Federal Roads Maintenance Agency, and their task is to monitor and maintain roads, right? And I'm not sure whether it's limited to federal or state roads because it does not say. Okay, and then I looked at LASWA, which is the Lagos State Waterways, Authority. They're charged with coordinating, maintaining reforms for long-term growth, development, and water transportation in Lagos State, and also granting licenses and concessions for the operation of terminals to the private sector. In this, they're also supposed to aggressively, that's my word, trace the private sector and make the process, friendlier for them to be able to invest. Then there's the Lagos State Ministry of Works and Transportation. And they say that what they do is plan and devise and implement the state policies on transportation. They're charged with two major tasks, which is to set up a centralized transit system for the Lagos metropolis and also to tackle problems of transportation in Lagos State. Okay, so we know that the Lagos State government on its own has tried to deploy quite a few systems down the road, right, or along the years. I was part of I can't remember what those cabs are called now, but they were red cabs, where I think they were the first set of metered cabs, right, which were introduced into the Lagos transportation system. Did one have to go online to book them? I think one had. And once you got into the cab, they start running the meter. So I used those, and then those ones disappeared. Then they came with the newer yellow taxis, but those ones were yellow with the red and green stripe instead of the yellow with the black stripes. Those ones also disappeared after a little while. I think there was another set. I don't know what happened to those ones. And then we've done the yellow buses, which are still on the road. We've done the waterways, which no longer exist in Lagos. We have Okadas, we've brought keke napeps, we've brought smaller buses, and we still have a huge transportation challenge. Coupled with the fact that majority of our roads are unmotorable, and especially in the rainy season. So this goes back to my trip, right? From Lakowe to VGC, I think it took us approximately about 2.5 hours. So I was saying to the cab driver that if I lived in Lakowe, I would not come out. I would make sure that everything I needed was within a max 10-20 kilometer radius. It doesn't make any sense for me to be in traffic from Lakowe all the way to VGC. There's road construction happening in VGC, and then the normal traffic all the way to Lekki. And I'm wondering why FERMA, LASWA, the Ministry of Roads, Works and Transportation in Lagos State have not come up with a more effective plan to lessen the time that individuals spend in traffic on the roads, especially in Lagos. From discussions I've had with people, I hear Lagos is, I think it's between number 1 and 5, the worst place in the world for drive time. So going home or going to work. It doesn't make any sense. Somebody came from Badagry to Lakowe and he left his house at 4:30 in the morning. He didn't get there till after 12. We left together. I dropped the person off at Antony at about 8:10. I have no idea what time he would have gotten home. So the states of our roads, if FERMA is charged with monitoring and maintaining roads, I would assume, because I tried to find out whether the Lekki to Ekpe is a federal government road or a Lagos State road. I couldn't find that information as of yet. I would assume that FERMA would know, especially with the population in that area, right? A lot of people stay in those areas because one, kind of, sort of, they say that land is cheaper, rent is cheaper, I'm not so sure if, I've never lived there, so I don't know, but there are a lot of people who live in those areas. We don't plan ahead. We don't think of there's going to be an explosion in this area. So how about widening the road? So for instance, 2 lanes on both sides going to Ekpe and coming back from Ekpe until you get to Aja does not make any sense. It's like the 2-lane road 2 going into Aja. It's madness. So what is FERMA doing? LASWA, what are you guys doing in terms of opening the waterways up to places like that so that there are options, right? I mean, I'm sure that if I got on a ferry from the mainland, for instance, okay, even if I can't get from the mainland and I move to Falomo, from Falomo, I should be able to get a ferry to Lakowe. It's a no-brainer. So what is it that we're not doing? What are we not considering Who are we not talking to? Or is it that we're just not interested in how the population goes about their daily business? How are you productive when you spend an average of 5 hours in traffic one way? Talk less of going back home. What's FERMA doing? What's the Ministry of Works and Transportation in Lagos State doing? LASWA, what are you doing? And even though the NRC, which is the Nigerian Railway Corporation, don't seem to be interested in intra-city rail lines at the moment, it's worth considering. If I could get on a train to anywhere in Lagos State, I would definitely take it. I will not be on the roads. There's nowhere you go in Lagos that the traffic is not going to get to you. So FERMA, please, if you're monitoring roads, if you're supposed to be monitoring roads, please monitor the roads that are not working for us, that add to our drive time, that help to reduce our quality of living. Yes, there's traffic all over the world, but there are options. If you don't want to drive, you can get on a bus. There's no bus corridor in that route at all. So there needs to be a bus corridor in that route. BRT needs to be extended to those areas. And they have to have their own dedicated lane so that people who know they're on the BRT do not get into 3, 4, 5, 6 hours of traffic, right? The railway corporations, we need rail lines. We have a huge number of people living in that corridor. Waterways, we need ferries. It is working in other countries, we can make it work, right? I would like to be able to say I can get up on a Saturday morning and go to Lakowe and know that I don't have to make a song and dance. It's not going to be a whole production. I should be able to get there in good time. So between an hour and 2 hours. Spend the time that I want to spend there and then know that I'm going back home at max 2 hours. So guys, I've thrown the challenge open. If you know anybody in this industries, then you or this parastatals, please let me know. I'm willing to speak to them. I want to find out what is going on. We cannot continue to live like this. Life can be a whole lot easier. My name remains EyiyemiOlivia, and until you listen and watch me again next week, watch me again next week, you all have a great week.